Okay, so we are live. Let me just check that everything is linking this week after last week. But we should be good. Okay, cool. We are good to go. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for being a first podcast guest and then being one of our first Ask Me Anything guests. It does make life a lot easier when you've got people like you supporting us.
Yeah, no, it's exciting to be on. Thank you for having me.
Anytime. Right. I have some questions, as we mentioned, but I really like Michael's question. So I'm going to get that up and we're going to start there and then go into mine. So Michael said that you've recently moved into a brand new industry. What
Yes.
advice would you give someone looking to make the same kind of pivot?
I was nervous about making the pivot myself because I was like, I don't really know. And it's hard to break into it. I struggled for the last couple of years to break into tech because my background hasn't been predominantly tech either. But I think the biggest thing for me was just doing it. And I know people say that all the time, but it was just a matter of going, okay, this seems really interesting. Let me just jump in and do it and putting myself out there. But also along the way learning about the industry. I think we were talking about it earlier, but I don't really know a lot about Web 3.0 and cryptocurrency, and I'm learning all of that at the moment. And I think having that propensity to learn and having that drive to learn is what is helping a lot at the moment. And people in the company that I'm working with now, they're more than happy. Like if I ask them questions, I'm like, I have no idea. Like I think the first week I was like, what is Web 3.0? What is this metaverse that we're the building in? And they were more than happy to sit down and explain it and go through the one-on-one. And it's really interesting stuff. But it was having that courage to be able to ask them those silly questions and not feel like, oh, I can't really ask anyone. I was Googling on the side, but I'm like, you go into a rabbit hole of information, but going back into the business and saying, actually, can you just sit down with me for 5 minutes and just give me like, what is this? Where should I start to learn about it? But yeah, I think just jumping in and making that jump is the hardest aspect of it. And then everything sort of flows on from there.
I guess that
Hopefully.
comes down to courage too, right? Like
Yeah.
the courage to make the jump and then continuing that courage just to keep asking the questions.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing, and that's been in any sort of industry. Like I've had a few industry jumps in my career across different places. So I've been in everything from blue collar to pharmaceuticals to um, industrial sort of backgrounds as well, and a lot of it has been I've learnt different skills along the way. So actually doing like, if I don't know anything, I will jump in, I will learn spray painting. I did spray painting, I did panel beating when I was working with a company that dealt with that kind of thing. And it's actually jumping in and going, oh, I actually want to learn about this. I want to know what they do to be able to recruit for it. You can't just jump in and just recruit a role that you don't know. You can take the best job brief in the world and you still might not know what to talk about in a phone screen or in an interview. So a lot of what I've done personally is just jump in and actually do that role and then learn about it along the way.
I love that. I think that's great advice. I remember a job that I had a few years ago. I worked at the post office in Jersey, and their HR department decided that everyone that worked in the office had to deliver post for a week a year because if not,
Yeah.
you'd never understand. And it was my favorite week of the year for a lot of reasons because the guys were great, but it gave you just such an understanding of that role. And I just feel like it helped build a really great culture because people really understood.
Mm. Yeah, and you can
Yeah.
actually relate to the people that you're hiring at the end of the day as well, regardless of if it's recruitment or HR. Even if you're speaking to them from a HR perspective, you know what they're going through, you know the struggles that they're going through, and you have a better understanding because you've done their role and you can go back and say, hey, I know what you're going through because I've seen you do it and I've done it myself.
Mm. Totally. So Neil's just popped up and asked, given your experience, can you fix this car? I'll go back for you and let him know.
I can't guarantee it's going to be perfect, Neil. I can try, but I'm going to be sitting there with a mallet just going at it. I feel like my partner will do a better job, but no, it is hard work. Like I did not realize. I was like, oh yeah, it's just panel beating. They're just like, you know, ding it out and that's it. But even spray painting, I was like going in, going, making jokes to them, going, "Oh, hey guys, I can do my nails. I'm pretty sure I can do spray painting. It's fine. It's not that hard. It is hard. It is so difficult. There's so much finesse and skill that you need in it. And this is the thing. Like I did not realize it. I was just making jokes about it, but I went in and they're like, "You did the worst job. Like this is awful." And it's just stepping back and going, okay, this is really hard work. I understand what you guys need to know and go through. And it's not just, just spraying things across. It's the chemical compositions. And they were telling me all of these things. I was like, oh, okay, then, you kind of click in, but I don't think I'll be able to do any of that really well for you.
Like, give it a go. Going back to Michael's question a little bit, and also one of the things we discussed in the podcast was that one of the reasons you love startup in TA is that ambiguity and the fact that all these different things get thrown up to you, and that obviously happens a lot in a new role, as we were discussing. But how do you balance the kind of new stuff that's getting thrown at you every day versus that to-do list that you already had? How do you balance those things?
It's a really good question. I don't think I have that balance down fully. I don't think you ever do. But it's knowing who to go to and where to go to and having those, asking those questions, because there is always going to be that ambiguity. It doesn't really disappear in startup world at all. I think until you get to a point where you've got more help and more resources. But at the beginning, it's just throw everything in, see what's priority. Like it's the same as any other role. Like organize your day out, prioritize what's the most important. But there is always going to be another fire to put out. You can have the perfect organized lists in the world, and then during the day you'll have 10 other things that just pop up, because that's the way it is. But it's having that flexibility to go, okay, my whole day's just thrown out of whack now, and not having to
Yeah.
um, freak out, I think, and just sort of go, oh my god, now I can't get anything done. It's being able to pivot, and being able to pivot pretty quickly and go, great, let's get all of these fires put out and then jump back into it, and being able to have that flexibility to be able to, I think, handle that ambiguity well is probably the biggest skill set that you need in that space.
Yeah, I think you're right. If you ever do really work out the answer to that, though, I think we all want to know the answer to that. Right, we've had a few questions in. Neil's got a more sensible question than the one about fixing his car. He said, if you were able to give one piece of usable day-to-day tactical advice for all the relative newbies in TA, what would it be?
Day-to-day advice, I think, get to know everybody around you. I think that's one of the biggest things I learned early on and from my managers was, you know, there's always this thing of like when you get into a new job, your first priority or there's pressure on you to fill a role straight away. But I really think building those relationships up at the very beginning in that first sort of 60 days, it's build the relationships first. And there's always going to be, everyone's always going to be on your back about filling a role tomorrow or yesterday in most scenarios. But having those relationships with the hiring managers or the other stakeholders in the company, I feel like that's going to help you a lot more with that communication aspect, and to be able to go back to them and say, hey, I've got 20 first priority roles. Which ones are we going to work on first and which ones are the most burning? But you've got that relationship with them to be able to go back to them and have that clarity and have that sense of your role clarity, but also your relationship with them. So I think that for anyone stepping in, that's something that I learned throughout the years, but it would have been useful when I first started in TA, because it was very much a fill the role, go, 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 and not kind of build those relationships later on. That was always second priority when I first started, but I've learned to switch that around and go build it first, build that relationship, and then you can help them better.
Yeah, I think that's awesome advice. Thank you. Okay, then we've also had one in. Favorite recruitment tools or tech?
Favorite recruitment tools. I've used a lot over the years, and I think it really comes down to what type of industry you're in, because it's going to chop and change. And I think this is one thing that I learned from Neil really well. No one tech does everything for you. some things are more user friendly, some tech is more functionality wise. So I think it really comes down to what works for your company. Like right now, I've had to demo ATSs that are specific to Liven itself or specific for what we need it to grow. And some of those solutions that I've used before, they didn't really relate, or it wasn't the right thing for them. So I think it's going to chop and change throughout the career. There's some that I really like working with. But I also like, I think it comes down. I don't really want to like name it. I know who's asking the question, but I feel like if I start throwing out names, then it becomes like hey, these are the only ones that actually work really well in our industry. It's not
Yeah.
the truth, right? Like everyone has their own opinion on what they like working with and what works for them. So I'll be able to
Yeah.
message you separately.
I think you're right though. I think it's all like a case by case basis, right? There isn't a one size fits all for everybody. It will depend what stage your business is at, what industry you're in, what really are your objectives to what works.
It's a
Yeah,
bit like
I'll leave
when
you
you go
guys.
shopping for clothes. Like something that appeals to me is not going to appeal to everybody. Like everyone has different tastes in the way
Mm,
they like to work. So I kind of liken it to shopping for clothes. Like we can go shopping with our girlfriends, and then someone's going to pick out something, and you're like, "Oh no, that's not going to work for me." So it's a bit like that with tech, I think.
mm. I like that analogy. All right. So Joe has asked that do you have a coach or a mentor right now?
Yes, I do. I do have a coach, and I also have a mentor. I have a couple of people that I rely on actually within especially within TA. I've got a bit of a support group. Joe's part of them as well. So I very heavily rely on, just running things past them, or if I'm being in a individual contributor role, especially in a startup,
Mhm.
there's only so many things that you can kind of turn around to your peers or other colleagues and go, oh my God, this is all breaking down. What do I do? So in terms of that sense, I've got my little group or harem where we all message each other. We're all going through the same thing. So to be able to turn around to like a Michael Delaney or a Rebecca or a Joe herself, I think I've on many occasions messaged her and gone, oh my God, things are breaking down. I don't know what to do. How do I deal with this? So I do rely on a few people in the industry, and they've helped me grow as well over the years. And to be able to go, actually, Pavi, you know what you're doing. Just calm down. Just stop freaking out. And I think we all go through that, and having those support systems or having those support people in the background really helps.
Yeah, totally. I think you're right. On that, and it links to a question that I had written down from your podcast. So one of the things we talked about on your podcast was knowing your worth. I think you've just said there, like sometimes you need the reminder that you know what you're doing and it's okay. We've got the answers. So
Yeah.
one of the things we talked about was knowing your worth. How do you people get to know their worth, and how can we help people get there quicker? Because I think like the discussions we had is like it took us a really long time to work out that we actually might be all right at our jobs and maybe somebody should pay us some real money for it, right? How do we help other people get through that journey quicker, or what advice can you give to people that are struggling with that?
Um, I think it's a difficult question because
Mm,
you can have multiple people telling you that you're good at what you do and you know what you're
mm,
talking about, but it's having that self-confidence. I think that's where if you don't have enough confidence in yourself, and I've gone through it, I've spoken to multiple people who have gone through it themselves. And even today, I was like, I think I told you, LJ, like in terms of being able to little things like being able to speak in front of people, it's a big jump for myself because that's not something that I'm used to doing or I'm comfortable doing, but it's being able to step outside of that. And when you have that support system around you, it's being able to bounce off ideas and go, actually, I know what I'm talking about. I know what they're telling me is right, but having that self confidence to be able to believe it, I think that's kind of the
mm,
first step. And then from there being able to build up, you've got the experience, you've got the background, but then you need those people to be able to tell you, yeah, you know this, you know that, just put it into action or help you get to the next steps. And sometimes it's just brainstorming out loud or talking through
mm.
the solution out loud for them to say, yeah, you've got the answer, you just need to put it into this and this, these are the next steps, go for it.
I think that's great. I guess that goes back to kind of a little bit of everything we've touched on in terms of having that support network, but probably having your coach that you can go and have those little mini meltdowns once a month and be like, why didn't I handle this? Or why didn't I think this?
Yeah.
And having all those, I guess, like everything, having the right tools to know how to handle it.
Mm.
The other thing that I wanted to talk about from your podcast was, because I don't think we touched on it. There was so much when I went back to your podcast. I was like, I don't know why we didn't talk about that, or why didn't we dive into that? So you started out in HR and then you moved into a TA role. And I think in the same with marketing, like we talk a lot about, being a generalist and then deciding what you want to specialize in. And I kind of feel like you probably did everything a little bit more in HR and then actually I really love talent acquisition. So I wonder whether you could kind of talk a little bit about where that move came from, but also just, I guess, what it is that you loved about it that made you do that move.
Yeah. I think in terms of what you just mentioned, that's I was doing bits of everything in my sort of early HR roles, and I had gone into a startup where I was doing everything from HR to work health safety. It was two people team running this startup and setting it up from the ground up. So along that way, I'd touched into recruitment and I got a bit of a taste for it, and I really liked it. I like the aspect of not just speaking to people and putting them into roles, but the coaching aspect of it. And when you're speaking to candidates, it's, you know, what else do you want to do past this? And sometimes I think one of the biggest things for me for moving into talent acquisition was not just the giving the people the roles when you call up to tell somebody that they're unsuccessful, but also give them other options like, hey, I can put you in touch with somebody else and so on. So, and be able to build up somebody's career outside of that. So it was more the coaching piece outside of that that I really wanted to explore. And I did a couple of contracts to sort of test the market and say, is this what I want to do? Like I like doing it, but it was also a very small part of my role. So I said, let's do a couple of contracts. Let's see if it's, on a day-to-day basis, if I actually like doing it long term. And then it just flowed on from there. I loved it, got into it. And I said, look, it's not just the career aspect. It's not just this. Like, I think in the last probably 10 years, TA, like the role of talent acquisition has grown so much more, especially in Australia. It's not just filling a role, it's looking at marketing the role, it's looking at the sales aspect of it, it's looking at brand awareness, candidate experience, employer branding, EVP. Like there's so many hats that you wear along the way. So along time, that role has evolved so much more than just, hey, we're speaking to candidates, we're screening your CVs and just filling a role. And that really appealed to me. It was more the aspect of there's so much more that we could be doing in this industry. And how do we step into all of those? And it's being able to, I think even now, talent acquisition has evolved so much more than what we were 7 to 10 years ago. There are candidate experience roles now popping up, employer branding roles popping up separately, and all these people from TA have moved into all of these specialized careers. So it's just an evolution of what we can be doing and what the industry is heading into, I think.
I think that's a great summary. I feel like last time I spoke to you, I felt like I should go and work in talent acquisition because I was missing all the fun. I feel like that again now. It's like that's where all the good stuff's happening. Okay, Sandra has asked a question. One of the worst things to happen to me in my HR role were death threats or implied danger. Wow. That's
Yeah.
what's the worst thing that you've encountered? Oh, that's awful.
I think similar stuff. I think we've all gone through that, and it's been what I mentioned. I think that's probably been the worst experiences that I've had as well. Is you can't please everybody, unfortunately, in these type of roles, and some people just take it a lot more negative. Than anything else, and it's just trying to help them along the way. But then there's other situations like this when you're getting, unfortunately, death threats and threats to, oh, I know where you are, I know where you live, and our profiles are everywhere. As a recruiter or as a talent acquisition person, we've got profiles all over the internet. It's not that hard to find, but you genuinely have a bit of fear and go, oh, actually, I think I've rubbed somebody up the wrong way, just because we weren't able to offer them the role, or we had managed them from a HR perspective and had to let them go. So I think in terms of what she's describing, we have at some point had some of those. it's scary when you do have it, and I don't think a lot of people realize that it does happen in the industry, and it's not just all flowers and rainbows and roses that we're offering people roles. There's the dark side of it as well that we have to manage on a daily basis and kind of have to switch off sometimes after work. And I've had it at home where I've gone through a really bad day and I've gone, look, I don't want to speak to anybody after this. I just need some downtime. I need to switch off. But then you have to kind of go back into it the next day with a fresh outlook and go, okay, we just have to ignore this. Hopefully it doesn't turn into anything worse, but it's, sometimes it's the dark side that people don't see, and we don't talk about it as an industry. We don't kind of go out there. We talk about it amongst ourselves, but it's more of a, hey, I just went through this. How do I deal with it? What do I do?
Wow, guys, that's awful. I'd never even. Wow, I don't know how you handle that. You're all amazing. I think Sandra's tried to flip it around a little bit, and also wants to know what's the best thing that's happened to you, just so we don't end on a sour note.
Best thing that's happened to me. I've had calls back from people that have said, look, after talking to you or after interviewing with you, even if it's not with that same company, I've had one lady call up and say, you've changed my life. Like, it's the best feeling when you've had somebody that she was in tears over the phone. She's like, this is the best news I've ever heard, because, as a lot of people have had really tough past couple of years, but this lady was like, I've not had a role for the last 2 years. I've got kids, and she was in tears. I was in tears. It was one of the best feelings I've ever had. And it kind of makes you, the flip side of it is that you go through all of this dark kind of experiences, but then on the flip side, you've just changed someone's whole outlook on life. It's not just a career to them, it is their livelihood. And to be able to make such an impact on somebody's life is amazing. And it kind of makes the dark sides are very few and far between, but this side of it, the flip side of it, is amazing, and there's a lot more of it. And it kind of makes you realize, this is what this is why I chose this line of work, and this is the career. And it's amazing, like, coming out of it going, you have the tears, you have the scary bits, but it just makes it all worthwhile at the end of the day.
Yeah, I bet. That is pretty amazing. Okay, looking at time, last question is from Neil. He said, what's your biggest TA related mistake or learning opportunity that sticks out in your mind?
Oof. Biggest TA mistake.
I love
Sending
that
out
he's then said learning opportunity. It's because I
Yeah.
probably told him at some point we're not allowed to use the word mistake. Can't use negative words. It's a learning opportunity.
No, it's definitely a learning opportunity. I think I've had that very early on. I did a lot of mistakes. It wasn't just the one or two, but the most prominent one is being sending out the contract to the wrong person, and sending out an offer contract and going, oh shit, this is not the person that they wanted to offer it to, and then having to backtrack because you can do all of the when you were able to retrieve emails that you've sent, but if they've opened it up, that's it. It's all done. You've sent all these legal documents, all the paperwork, and having to retrieve all of that, but then calling up the candidate and saying, "I'm so sorry, we didn't actually mean to send this contract to you." That's probably the most prominent in my mind. And now I like double check, triple check everything since then before an offer goes out, making sure it's the right person, regardless of whatever role I'm in, whatever seniority you get into. It's made me a lot more detail oriented over the years. And you never want to be in a situation where you've offered somebody a role and they're so happy, and then you're like, actually, I'm so sorry, wasn't meant to go to you, but can we get this back?
Yeah. That's, I say, I feel like in marketing, everybody that's ever worked in marketing has definitely sent the wrong email to the wrong email list, or we've definitely done something like that. But it's not, I guess, as emotive as a job offer. Like, it's not quite the same. But yeah, the triple and double checks. I think 12 years on, I still feel so nervous whenever I hear send button on an email send. Like, oh God, it's gonna go to however many thousand people. It better be right. But yeah, okay, that is amazing. We are literally just before 25 minutes. Thank you so much for today. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you, and thanks for all the question, guys.
Yeah, thanks, team. See you soon.
Thanks.